3 years ago, I, 29M, was a happy man, married to the love of my life, Sarah, 27F. It seemed like that was the prime time of my life. I was working at a reputed law firm and had my beautiful wife by my side. We met during one of our internships and became inseparable very soon. So, after both of us were settled in our jobs, I proposed and she said yes. Very soon, we got married in a small, intimate ceremony. The only thing that was not at its best at that time was my relationship with my family. I was the middle child, so I always felt neglected by everybody. Growing up, my older sister Lily was the golden child, excelling in academics and sports, while my younger brother Mike was the baby of the family, doted on by our parents. I, on the other hand, seemed to exist in a perpetual blind spot. Even when I made it into law school, my parents' reaction was lukewarm at best. The biggest compliment I got from my mother was, "That's nice, dear." That is why I decided that I would focus on my studies and work as hard as possible so that I don't have to depend on them. But ever since I got married, Sarah would often suggest that I should at least try to rekindle my bond with my family. She came from a close-knit family herself and could not understand the distance between me and my relatives. So, one year, we decided that we would host Thanksgiving dinner and invited everybody. Even though I didn't have any expectations, I was willing to try for Sarah. Surprisingly, everybody accepted our invitation. On that day, Mom, Dad, my sister Lily and her husband, and my younger brother Mike arrived. My mom and dad initially did the same thing they had always done, being judgmental of everything I did. But after a while, they dialed it down when they saw how hard my wife and I worked to please them. Sarah was trying her best to mingle with everybody, especially my brother Mike. I didn't pay much attention to it, thinking that it was nice that they were bonding. The evening progressed, and for once, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe Sarah was right. Maybe things could change. As we all sat around the dinner table, sharing stories and laughing, I allowed myself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, I could have the family relationship I'd always yearned for. If only I knew that things weren't as innocent and good as they seemed to me. Fast forward a few months, and I started noticing subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. She became distant, often distracted and lost in thought. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give vague answers before changing the subject. I chalked it up to stress at work and didn't push her to open up. Sarah had recently taken on a high-profile case at her firm, and I assumed the pressure was getting to her. I tried to be supportive, taking on more household chores and surprising her with her favorite meals. It wasn't until I accidentally stumbled upon a series of messages on her phone that my world came crashing down. Sarah had left her phone on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower, and it kept buzzing with incoming messages. Concerned that it might be an emergency from work, I glanced at the screen. What I saw made my blood run cold. She and Mike had been texting each other nonstop, and the nature of those messages made it clear that they had crossed a line. They were having an affair. Confronting Sarah was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. She broke down and confessed that she and Mike had developed feelings for each other, which they had acted on. According to her, she started talking to him because he seemed like the favorite child and she thought my parents would like her if Mike put in a good word for her. Apparently, this was her way of proving herself to my family. I felt humiliated, angry, and utterly shattered. The next few days were a blur. I moved out of our shared apartment, unable to bear the sight of her. I was mentally replaying every interaction between Sarah and Mike, searching for signs I might have missed. I even tried to reason with Sarah, to understand her logic, but she refused to talk to me. Each time I called I was met with a voicemail message. What hurt even more was my family's reaction. Instead of being shocked or disapproving, they welcomed the idea of Sarah and Mike dating with open arms. They told me that they would stay neutral in this situation, which angered me the most, because what could ever justify this? My parents, who were judgmental of every step I took since I was a kid, were somehow okay with this. In fact, they seemed weirdly excited about the prospect. I even remember my mom saying that it's for the best and that at least this way, Sarah will still be part of the family. It was clear that they were more inclined to support Mike and Sarah, seeing their relationship as a sign of true love rather than betrayal. The divorce proceedings were quick and painless, at least on paper. Sarah didn't want anything from me, which was honestly a relief. I couldn't bear the thought of prolonged legal battles, of having to see her face across a courtroom. Within months, she and Mike were engaged, and the family was buzzing with excitement about the upcoming wedding. I felt like a 12-year-old kid again, alone and misunderstood in his own family. The betrayal cut deep, not just from Sarah and Mike, but from my entire family who seemed to think this was perfectly normal behavior. On the day of their wedding, I packed my bags and left town. I didn't leave a note, didn't say goodbye. I simply disappeared from their lives. I moved to a different state, changed my phone number, and cut all ties with anyone who might connect me to my past life. It was a drastic move, but it felt like the only way to preserve what was left of my sanity. For the last 3 years, I focused on rebuilding my life. I threw myself into my work, taking on challenging cases and building a reputation as a formidable attorney. I made new friends and even started dating again. Slowly, the pain began to dull, and I started to feel like myself again. I thought I had finally put that chapter of my life behind me. My new life was good, not perfect, but stable and fulfilling in a way I hadn't thought was possible after everything that had happened. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Out of the blue, I got a call one day, and even though the number wasn't saved in my contacts, I recognized it immediately: my mother's cell phone. I did not answer the call. I was not about to let them destroy a life that I had built for myself all over again. It was very clear by now that any call from family meant bad news. But Mom wasn't accepting defeat either. She would bombard me with calls and voice messages. Each missed call felt like a ticking time bomb, threatening to shatter the peace I had so carefully constructed. Eventually, I gave up and picked up the call. Mom was on the other side, and her tone was weirdly chirpy, as if nothing had ever happened. She asked me how I was doing, and where was I exactly, and mentioned that the family missed me. Like that would ever happen. To an outsider, this might seem like a normal conversation, but knowing my mother, this was anything but typical. She was never one to be lovey-dovey with me. Our interactions had always been more practical, bordering on cold. So, her sudden warmth felt bizarre and definitely not genuine. I cut her off, demanding to know why she was calling me after all this time. She tried to evade my question, insisting that I should come home for dinner to discuss things in person. The mere suggestion of returning to that house, the scene of so much betrayal and pain, made my stomach turn. I firmly told her that whatever she needed to say, she could do it over the phone. There was a pause on the other end, and then she dropped the bombshell: Mike was in serious trouble. She explained that he had developed a gambling problem and had accumulated significant debts. In a desperate attempt to cover his losses, he had embezzled money from his employer. The police were now involved, and he was facing criminal charges. My family was in turmoil, and they didn't know where to turn. So, they were asking for my help, given my legal background. After hearing this news, on the one hand, I felt like this was just karma, and he had this coming for a long time. The same brother who had betrayed me was now seeking my help, the help of the family member they had all but erased from their lives. But another part of me was concerned about my little brother. Despite everything, he was still family. I couldn't help but find it ironic that the only time my family remembered they had another son, one they hadn't contacted in 3 years, was when their favored son was in trouble. It was as if I was nothing more than a tool to them, a means to an end. I felt a bitter satisfaction in knowing that they needed me, but I also felt the weight of the decision before me. Could I really turn my back on my family, even after everything they had done? Anyway, when Mom was done explaining everything, I simply said that I would think about it. She even asked me where I was exactly, and Mike could come to me. But I was not going to tell them my whereabouts so that they could knock at my door at every minor inconvenience. When that didn't work, she began to cry on the phone, practically begging me to help my brother. Her desperation was palpable, and despite everything, it tugged at my heartstrings. I reluctantly told her I would see what I could do, and then I hung up, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. A week later, against my better judgment, I found myself standing in front of my childhood home. It felt surreal, almost like stepping back into a past life. Every fiber of my being wanted to turn around and leave, to find any excuse not to go back into that house. But I had made a commitment, and I needed to see it through, if only for my own peace of mind. When Dad opened the door, he looked like he was surprised that I actually came. I sat down, ready to discuss the case, eager to be done with this uncomfortable reunion as quickly as possible. I explained all the details to Mike and made it clear from the start that while I would help them find a competent lawyer for Mike, I would not be personally handling the case. My father, however, was not pleased with this. He made a snarky comment, saying something to the effect of, "Is this how you repay us for everything we've done for you? For making you who you are today?" When I got offended by that, my mom made a remark that it was my responsibility to help my family. That was the final straw. The anger and resentment that I had been holding back for years came flooding out. I laid out everything they had done to me, every moment of neglect and betrayal. I reminded them how they had always treated me as an afterthought, how they had dismissed my feelings and opinions, and how they had sided with Mike and Sarah without a second thought. I told them how their actions had left me feeling isolated and unloved, and how they had backstabbed me my whole life. My family looked shocked as if they had never considered how their actions had affected me. But at that moment, I didn't care. I was done trying to make them understand, done trying to seek their approval or love. Without waiting for a response, I stood up and stormed out of the house. Mike and Mom probably ran after me, but I was too angry to care. Even though this confrontation was painful, it also gave me a strange sense of calm. I had finally stopped taking everybody else's opinion to heart and stood up for myself in a way I never had before. I did not care anymore about what Mom and Dad thought of me or what happened to Mike, because whatever they might go through, they had it coming. My phone was flooded with voice messages after that, and I knew that it was either Mom or Mike, offering their insincere apologies and pleading for my help. I ignored them all. I was determined to stay firm in my decision to maintain my distance. But days later, I got a call from another number, and I picked up, thinking that it could be work-related. But no, it was Sarah, my ex-wife. She started by apologizing, saying she was sorry for everything that had happened between us. It was the same kind of elaborate apology I had heard from my family, full of regret and self-pity. Sarah went on to explain that Mike was in deeper trouble than I might realize. She claimed that he had gotten involved with some very dangerous people through his gambling habit and that the embezzlement charges were just the tip of the iceberg. According to her, if Mike didn't get out of this mess quickly, he would sink even deeper, potentially facing much more serious consequences. She pleaded with me, saying that as a lawyer, I was his best chance of navigating this legal mess. Sarah's plea was that I step in and help Mike, not just for his sake but for the family's. She argued that despite everything, we were still connected, still family in some way. She asked if I could find it in my heart to set aside the past, at least temporarily, to help them through this crisis. The idea of helping Mike, after everything, felt both right and wrong. Was it worth risking my own well-being to save someone who had betrayed me? And so, here I am, looking for any possible guidance from you guys. My family, who once ignored me, now needs me more than ever. But is it my responsibility to do so? Am I being selfish by wanting to stay out of it, or am I justified in protecting myself? Ida for refusing to help my brother and family, even though I might be he only one who can? Update 1. Hi everybody. First and foremost, thank you to all of you who left supportive comments. You have no idea how helpful this has been in this difficult time. Some things have happened since I posted my story, so just wanted to update you guys. After a lot of thinking, I decided that I would help Mike through this case. It's not about winning favor with Sarah, nor am I doing it for my parents' approval, because I have accepted the fact that it is not possible to satisfy them. It's about doing what's right as a lawyer and a human being. At least this way, whatever happens to Mike, I can say I did my part. I'm still standing by what I said earlier to my family. I won't be fighting this case in court. Instead, I reached out to a friend from my old firm to be the lead attorney, while I assist him with research and investigation. I made it clear to everyone involved that my role is strictly professional. This isn't about reconciling or patching things up, it's about ensuring Mike has a fair chance in his legal battle. As we dug into the case, it became apparent that Mike had gotten himself into a mess with some pretty shady characters. From what we gathered, he got caught up in gambling debts and, in a desperate attempt to get out of it, started embezzling funds from his employer. The situation was grim, but not entirely without hope. One thing working in Mike's favor was that the people he was involved with weren't exactly law-abiding citizens either. There was plenty of dirt on them that could be useful in building a defense. The days since have been a whirlwind of meetings, research, and strategy sessions. We've been working tirelessly to piece together a defense that could decrease some of the charges. Mike has been cooperating with the authorities, which is crucial for potentially reducing his sentence. He's showing a willingness to make things right, not just legally, but also within our family. There are moments where I see genuine remorse and a desire to change, but it's hard to tell if that's enough to turn things around. While working on the case, I've had to interact with my family more than I'd like. My parents seem to think that my involvement means we're all on the road to some big reconciliation, but I made it clear that's not the case. Sarah, too, has been hovering around, offering to help in any way she can. It's awkward, to say the least, but I keep reminding myself that I'm here to do a job, not to mend broken relationships. The more we uncover, the more complicated the situation seems. It's clear that Mike was way over his head, and whether he realized it or not, he made some terrible decisions. But seeing him in this vulnerable state, trying to fix his mistakes, stirs up conflicting emotions. Despite all this, I'm not letting myself get drawn back into the family drama. I've been careful to set boundaries and make sure that my involvement doesn't extend beyond the legal aspects. There have been moments where my parents and Sarah have tried to pull me into emotional discussions about the past, but I've managed to steer clear of those traps. They've expressed a desire to rebuild our relationship, but I'm not ready for that. I'm still processing everything that's happened, and it's going to take time to even consider opening that door. Right now, my focus is on the case and ensuring that Mike has the best possible defense. While I'm not ready to forgive and forget, I'm also not interested in holding on to bitterness. My priority right now is to help Mike navigate this legal storm, and then continue focusing on my own life. There's a long road ahead, and the outcome is still uncertain, but I know I made the right choice in getting involved, if not for them, then for my own peace of mind. Thanks again for all your support. It means more than you know. I'll keep you posted as things progress. Update 2. Hi everybody. Hope you're all doing well. I saw many questions regarding Mike's case and what exactly had he done, so here it is. Of course, I can't share everything, but I'll try to include the key details to give you a clearer picture. After diving deeper into the situation, it became evident that Mike's troubles were more serious than I initially realized. Mike had racked up considerable gambling debts, and to recover from his financial losses, which led him to borrow money from some shady characters. To cover these debts, he started embezzling money from his employer. This wasn't just a case of stealing from petty cash. Mike was manipulating financial records, creating false invoices, and transferring significant sums into accounts under his control. Initially, he managed to keep it under the radar, but as the amounts increased, so did the risks. The company's internal audit team eventually caught on, uncovering the loopholes that led to a thorough investigation. The evidence they found was damning, with detailed records showing how Mike had systematically mooched off the company of its funds. That led to him getting sued, facing charges of embezzlement, fraud, and potentially more depending on the outcome of ongoing investigations. The prosecution's case is strong, with a trail of digital and paper evidence that links Mike to pretty much everything. But this was not all. As I was skimming through all the evidence, I found out that someone else was involved in covering up the embezzlement. The shock hit me when I realized it was Sarah, my ex-wife. This felt like a sucker punch. Sarah, who had once been my partner, was now entangled in this scandal with my brother. I had to confront them both to get their side of the story. Mike looked lost, a far cry from the confident younger brother I remembered, while Sarah seemed defensive. They told me their version of events, describing a downward spiral of poor decisions and desperate actions. I was disappointed in Sarah, because the Sarah I knew was an honest, hard-working lady, and now I don't know what went wrong. From a legal standpoint, the case seemed straightforward. The evidence against Mike was substantial, and Sarah's involvement, while secondary, was still serious. My mind began turning over potential defenses and strategies, but none of them offered a clean solution. The best we could hope for might be a plea deal, possibly reducing the charges in exchange for cooperation. Adding to the pressure was my family's expectation that I would help. They seemed to see this as an opportunity to heal old wounds, to bring the family back together. My parents have been trying to use this situation as an opportunity to mend fences. Well, by parents, I mean Mom. Dad is still not thrilled about the fact that I'm not personally taking care of the case. But I couldn't forget that they had welcomed Sarah back into the fold without considering the impact on me. Now, they wanted me to fix a problem partly of their own making. Sarah has also been around, expressing concern for Mike and offering help. She seems to be dealing with her own guilt and regrets and has tried multiple times to have that conversation, but I've no interest in whatever story she has, especially now, when she has become Mike's partner in crime. As we prepare for the trial, the atmosphere is tense. My family is anxious, hoping for a favorable outcome, but also dealing with the reality that Mike's actions will have consequences. I've had to remind them repeatedly that while I can help legally, I can't undo what's been done or change the past. The next steps would be crucial, preparing for a potential plea deal, gathering character witnesses, and planning for the worst-case scenario. To everyone who's been following this saga and offering advice, thank you for your continued support. It's been invaluable in navigating this difficult time. I'll keep you updated as the trial progresses and hopefully, the next time I write, I'll have more clarity on the outcome. Update 3. Hi everybody. I'm back with an update and I think this would be my last one. Buckle up for a bunch of news and believe me, the last one was unexpected for me too. So, let's dive right in. As you know, we were working hard on Mike's case, and the last few weeks have been a whirlwind of legal maneuvers. We're talking legal moves left and right and some pretty intense negotiations. The big breakthrough came when Mike's lead lawyer had a crucial meeting with the heads of Mike's former company. This meeting? It was do or die time, not just for Mike's legal future but for all the craziness that came with his case. We were trying to work out a deal that would let Mike make things right without dragging everyone through a full-blown court drama. Now, those board members were definitely mad, feeling like Mike had stabbed them in the back after years of trust. They wanted to make an example out of him, scare anyone else who might think about pulling the same stunt. Throughout this whole showdown, we kept hammering home that Mike was ready to come clean and cooperate 100%. One more thing that worked to our benefit was that some of those high and mighty board members weren't exactly squeaky clean themselves. The game changer though? We put it out there that Mike would pay back a big chunk of the money he took. Yeah, he'd still get fired from his job, but at this point, we were thinking, hey, something's better than nothing, right? And that's the deal we finally shook hands on. Now, don't get me wrong. We were all breathing a sigh of relief, but it's not like we were popping champagne or anything. Mike's career? Almost over. And the money he had to pay back? Ouch. But at least he wasn't heading to the prison, so there's that. As the dust started to settle, we were all hoping this nightmare was finally over, but another shockwave hit the family. Sarah, who'd been standing by Mike through this whole mess, out of the blue decides to file for divorce. I'm telling you, this news came out of nowhere. Everyone, including Mike, was caught off guard. Sarah's decision seemed sudden and out of character, given how she had been helping him cover up the embezzlement. Mike was devastated. Poor guy thought they were in this together, that facing the consequences of their actions would somehow bring them closer. Instead, it seemed to drive a wedge between them and blew them apart. We couldn't figure out exactly why Sarah was bailing, but it seemed like the weight of the scandal, plus all the money and social drama heading their way, was just too much for her to handle. For me, Sarah's decision was just another crazy turn in this wild story. The irony wasn't lost on me, either. When Sarah cheated on me way back then, she kept saying Mike got her like no one else could. But now, when he's at rock bottom, she's packing her bags again. After she dropped the divorce bomb on everyone, she actually called me up, asking if she was doing the right thing and apologizing, again. I just told her straight up that it was her call, and I'd rather not get mixed up in all that. Now, don't think for a second that I was feeling sorry for Mike. Like I said before, this was karma doing its thing. He should have known that after all the crap he put Sarah and the family through, things were bound to fall apart sooner or later. That's why when my sister Lily tried to get me to talk Sarah out of the divorce, I was like, no way that was happening. I mean, come on, why would I want to chat with my ex-wife about her splitting up with my brother? Talk about awkward. With all the legal stuff wrapped up and the personal drama still unfolding, it was my time to distance myself once again. My work with Mike and Sarah was done. They would have to face the consequences of their actions and decisions on their own. I couldn't fix everything, and honestly, it wasn't my job to do so. It was time to get back to my own life, Focus on my career and taking care of myself. So, I packed my bags and left without telling anyone because I knew my mom and dad wouldn't react well to it. As I left the family home, I felt a sense of closure. It wasn't a happy ending or anything, far from it. Nobody really came out on top in this situation. It was more about lessons learned and relationships either patched up or totally destroyed. For me, this whole experience drove home how important it is to set boundaries and how complicated family ties can be. Sometimes, no matter how good our intentions are, old issues can pop up and mess with our sense of duty and who we are. Walking away, I knew I'd done what I could. I'd helped out with the legal stuff and, in a way, provided some emotional support, even if it was from a distance. Now it was up to Mike, Sarah, and the rest of the family to figure out the next part of their lives. As for me, I was ready to turn the page and move on, taking all the lessons I'd learned with me into whatever comes next. And you know what? I finally figured something out through all this mess. I don't need my family's gold star to feel like I've accomplished something. I stepped up when things got rough. I did what any decent person would do. I probably went above and beyond, to be honest. So I think I'm officially done seeking their approval. By the way, I am so grateful to all of you for staying with me throughout this chaos. Your support was a godsend during this difficult time. Love y'all.